All right, this is Kali Akuno for the Black Agenda Report. This is a morning shot with Kamau Franklin with the Malcolm X Grassroots Movement. Kamau, we want to get an update and share some information that most of the country may not know about, but there was a critical electoral race in Mississippi that happened in Hinds County on August 2nd, where a sheriff, brother name, I believe his name was Tyrone Lewis, you can speak to us, became the first black sheriff in his county to be elected, and it was a major initiative to recall his or to steal the election. So could you speak on that just to give us some perspective on it?
As folks probably don't know, Hinds County is a majority black county in Mississippi, where the state capital, the city state capital, Jackson, is located. Hinds County is over 70% black, and Jackson as a city is over 80% black. Hinds County was incorporated in 1821, and from 1821 till August 2nd, there's never been a black sheriff, even though Hinds County has been majority black for upwards of 20 to 30 years. What happened on August 2nd was inspiring, and it was something that took, let's say, those in charge by storm, because they did not expect for this race to come out the way it did, with supporters from around the county, and including Malcolm X Grassroots Movement members who played a key role in trying to make sure that this brother was elected. We thought it was important because Tyrone Lewis is a progressive politician and or a progressive law enforcement person. So not only is he concerned about safety issues, but he's concerned about recidivism rates. He's concerned about jail conditions. He's concerned about lowering the mass incarceration rate in Hinds County. So we think these things, and I should also say he's advocating for a civilian complaint review board in Hinds County. These things are not things that law enforcement officials usually run on. And we think some of that is his own inclination, and some of that is the inspiration that he's received from members, particularly Chokwe Lumumba, of the Malcolm X Grassroots Movement over the years. So we went into the election thinking that it was going to be close. We spent a lot of energy, again, working with this brother, everything from helping to put together commercials to getting out in a street team, making flyers and literature and everything else that goes with the campaign. And we were rewarded on August 2nd with a victory from the voters of Hinds County, particularly the black majority voters. The other thing we had in our favor actually was normally the sheriff, who's been in power for 20 years, his name is Malcolm McMillan, normally gets crossover vote from white Republicans in Hinds County, because usually in the Republican elections, the primaries, there's no challengers. And so what they've done is crossed over for the last 20 years and voted upwards of 7,000 to 10,000 extra votes he would receive, whereas normally he would not get those votes. This time, luckily for us, there were contested elections in the Republican primary, which made whites who were conservative have to choose between voting in the Democratic election or voting in the Republican election. And they had to vote in the Republican election because they felt their own conservative interests were more at stake than retaining the Hinds County office. And so we won the position. We had 51% of the vote. McMillan had 45% of the vote, and another black candidate was also in the race, and he got 4.5% of the vote. So we were ecstatic. The days that followed the actual election were days of trepidation and nervousness, because we felt that if we didn't act in terms of bringing down people en masse to the courthouse, that this election could be stolen. The media tried to play it as if there was mass confusion, as if there was a lot of tampering, as if there was a lot of reason to have doubt as to the outcome of the election, and they focused in on the sheriff's election, because that was the one of major concern. Obviously, if they're claiming there was issues with the election in terms of the sheriff's race, then their claim had to go that there was election issues in all the races. But they focused in on the sheriff's race because it was so close. And made it sound as if we who were down here at the courtroom were acting as a mob. Several newspapers, even so-called white liberal newspapers, the Jackson Free Press comes to mind, reported as if there was a mob conditions at the courthouse. But what really was happening at the courthouse was that there were citizens, backers of Tyrone Lewis, who wanted to watch each and every affidavit vote, each and every paper ballot vote that came into election headquarters so that we can make sure that those votes were counted and counted fairly, that there weren't new votes that came into being outside of what we knew that was already there. And so it was very important for us to sort of be there. We had support, again, not only from Malcolm X Grassroots movement, but People's Assembly and the larger Hinds County community to support him.
All right, now, one piece you mentioned was kind of like aspects of his platform. And I know many people are beginning to thinking about running for sheriff throughout the country to challenge particularly the mass incarceration of our people. And I know just from looking at some things, and you mentioned in the interview, that that's one of the pieces of his platform. Is definitely, I know, a central component of the Malcolm X Grassroots movement. But what's some of the thinking in terms of knowing that he's going to run into some limitations, some structural limitations, some political limitations? How do we continue to engage the brother to keep him on point and to follow through on that particular issue?
If anybody knows who we are as an organization, Malcolm X Grassroots Movement, they know that this was a decision to back this brother was something that went through many manifestations, and it was a hard decision. Even though there were people who knew him for a long time, there were people who trusted him because he had fulfilled the office of Jackson police chief for 6 months, and the community supported him. But obviously, we as an organization don't necessarily support the police, whether it be the sheriff or local police departments, because of their history of oppressing our communities. So this was not an easy decision for us. So I would say for others who are thinking about doing something like this, one, you can't just support any politician who comes up to you and says, I want your support. We knew who Tyrone Lewis was, and we felt that being involved in his campaign, and in some ways being involved in his now sheriff administration, will ensure as much as possible that we can hold him to his campaign promises. We believe he wants to fulfill his campaign promises, but we know that there's going to be a lot of different forces pulling against him to fulfill those promises. And so we think it's up to us to stay engaged throughout this administration, to keep having an ear to him, to make sure that some of us are part of his closest advisors, and to come with him with real suggestions and recommendations and plans on what needs to happen to make sure that people are not abused because they're prisoners, to make sure that people come in the way they left out, except for they've now received maybe some job training or some job skills, educational training, educational skills, that they may have a place to live, that they are signed up for Medicaid or Medicare, whatever they need in terms of health care. But to make sure that these things happen, to make sure that the conditions of the jail are improved so that people aren't victimized by horrific conditions that they suffer under, and to make sure that the working conditions are improved, that people just aren't making things for corporations to go sell. In particular, in Jackson, there's a jail in which there's a large farm, and in jail the inmates work on that farm. But they currently don't get to have any of the food that's served. All of that gets sold to businesses, and all that money stays in the county. We think that needs to change. We wouldn't work on this campaign if we thought that would stay the same. So we feel like we have to keep sort of the fire underneath him. We have to support him against others who are going to come against him. And we have to make sure that not only does he does a job of helping make communities safer, but that he does a job that makes sure that prisoners' rights are respected and not abused. And this is not just the same thing that used to happen or happened prior to him and in other places, but because of the population of Hinds County and the interest that people had in getting him elected, that he will stay true to his campaign promises and come and fulfill those promises by doing the things that we just spoke about.
All right, Kamau, I want to thank you for taking some time to do the interview. This is again Kali Akuno signing off for the Black Agenda Report and for this Black Agenda Morning Shot. Thank you.
Thank you.